Hi, I'm Rory Greener from XR Today, bringing the latest in news and conversation from the extended reality space. Today you're tuning into the May 2024 edition of the Big XR News Show, and joining me to discuss some of the hottest industry topics are Amy Peck, the CEO of Endeavour XR, Jay Latta, speaker and founder of The Fusionists, Kevin O'Donovan, a co-chair at the VAR's Industrial Metaverse and Digital Twin Committee, as well as Jennifer Wolfe, an executive officer at the IEEE's Learning Technology Standards Committee. In this month's edition of the show, we are taking a look at the current standing of some of the industry's leading companies as event season comes racing into view. Firstly, we're going to be talking about Apple. Analysts are saying that Apple have cut down the Vision Pro production assembly cycles to 200,000 to 300,000 units. Some are calling this a failure, with the analyst himself saying that Apple are failing to hit their iPhone moment. I'll open it up to our panelists. What do you all think about this?
Well, rumors are rumors, and like they've only shipped 200 to 300,000 devices. You know, my God, what a failure for a $4,000 device. I suppose it depends on where your expectations are. I think they're a long way away from it being a failure. We've also seen a lot of new at the earnings call recently talking about the impact on enterprise. So it will be interesting to see what comes out of that. In terms of, it comes back to the expectations. I think some people were probably thinking that everyone that has an iPhone will suddenly go and buy a Vision Pro. That was never going to happen. And to be quite honest, it is a developer platform, right? Most people are still trying to figure out what I can do with it. And once they get their heads around, it's going, oh, wow. No, it's not the answer to every single problem and feature out there. But if they're cutting back production a bit, maybe that's their business call. But at the same time, I think they're just getting started. So let's see what they bring up at the developer conference.
Yeah, I do want to hop on that because I do think you kind of set the tone. It's that we're also forgetting that it's not like the iPhone moment. In fact, the analyst, who was quoted in the article, said, oh, they were wrong about it being an iPhone moment. It's like they weren't. It was never meant to be an iPhone moment because this is a very different construct, right? Smartphones had already been on the market for quite some time before the first iPhone came out. This is market making, right? There was the same speculation with the Quest Pro that they were going to scrap the Quest 2. They've recently made some noises that they're going to potentially now have a Quest Pro 2 in addition to some other things that we'll be talking about shortly. But I think it's just social media. We have to complain about something. So let's talk about like this terrible failure. But 200 to 300,000 devices is to your point, Kevin. It's $3,500 to $4,000 device on really a developer platform, and not even early adopters at this point. I think is very telling. And from the developers that I've spoken to, they're all really excited about the capability. They love building on it. And they recognize that if anyone has a path to consumers, it's Apple.
Absolutely, exactly my thoughts. The thing is, it was never meant to be an Apple moment. What we've seen partly is that many wannabe influencers, many wannabe futurists, bullshitters and so on, simply wanted to be witnesses of an iPhone moment. So they bought this device already knowing that they will return it because they can't afford it, because they don't have a fucking clue what to do with it. The developers, the ones who really are like with a Mac Pro, you don't buy a Mac Pro just to surf in the internet. This is a completely different group of people. So the developers, the ones who are setting up businesses, who are developing new fancy stuff onto it, who try to explore how should UI, UX of the future look like, they are okay with this device because it still set a benchmark. And no one, not even Zog, can talk this away. So 300,000 units is far away from being a failure. Of course, I wish that it would look slightly different. I mean, Apple guys, if you are listening to this episode, please take away the frontal display. I don't want anyone to see any kind of animated eyes and whatsoever. You could save a lot of money with this nonsense. So it's really about, in my opinion, it fulfilled what it was planned for, to set up a device for developers to explore these high-end possibilities. Just because some people, as usual, do not like it and are right now talking everything into bed, the world will not stop spinning, right?
Jay, I just want to say I'm going to be very excited when we do next month's episode, where we get to announce that you're the new head of product for the Apple Vision Pro. So congratulations in advance on that.
Right?
Leave your phone on, because they're going to be calling you later tonight.
They might be calling, but I'm not sure it'll be a job.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, look, I'll just echo what a lot of everyone's already said. Obviously there are pros and cons of closed ecosystems. If there's anyone that's figured out how to make closed ecosystems work, it's Apple. Obviously, we know that there's a huge development upfront effort that needs to take place, particularly in a closed ecosystem approach, to make sure that there's amazing experiences for people, for organizations to have. And so I think that's what we're seeing, just as everyone's talking about, right? You've got developers who are really embracing this, who are really excited about the capability that it gives them with regards to creating experiences. And I think, lots are in the process of kind of taking some of these tools. I think Amy brought up the fact that, this is different than smartphones. It's not like this has existed in the world before. So you've got developers who are trying to look at the capabilities and what they can do with it. I don't think this is the end of the story either, just as everyone else has said. I think we've only just begun with regards to seeing what this looks like as it starts to get, beyond developers' hands into the hands of, different consumer and industrial applications.
If I can add as well, something I wasn't aware of, I was at Hanover Messe a couple of weeks back, and there was a company there with a Vision Pro training solution for electricians. It was the first time I got to use a Vision Pro in the wild, as the man said. Excellent device, not perfect, but very good experience. But to cut a long story short, I wasn't aware, but it was the only public demo at the show of Vision Pro, because it is very tightly controlled. So here in Europe, you do not see Vision Pro demos at any event.
There's also a reason. Yeah, there's a reason for that also, because they that's why the setup takes such a long time, because it's very, very specific to each user. So the device does the IPD, so they'll check your pupillary distance, and like they have even said, like, it's not something you want to put in a demo environment necessarily, because it's such a personal
and
device.
Don't forget, it's still the first rollout was in the US. It's still a hard thing really to get them outside. In France, in whatever. So it's not really that easy. And if you bring it in by your own, you pay crap loads of money.
My point being is that, and to Amy's point earlier, the device is the device, but it's the ecosystem around it. And that is simply being built. We see Unity 6 with the new hand tracking things. We Epic with their new bits and pieces in Unreal Engine. You have all of the spatial photos and videos that are now coming on the new iPad and the new phones and from Samsung and. So I think people are just starting to get their heads around in terms of how do we create content? How do we create apps? What are the benefits? I absolutely get, Amy, that it is a very personalized device. So just handing it to someone and go and put that on with glasses, pointless, right? It'll be a bad experience. But I think we're just, people are still trying to getting their heads around, God, this is what I could do with this thing.
Right.
And all the ecosystem is being built and everyone's trying to come up. There's, Cook spoke about the top Fortune 500 companies are all playing with it. Most of the crowd I know, they are all playing with it for certain use cases. So and again, it's not the answer to everything, but it's like, yeah, I think they're just starting.
I'm being, or I've been in the past, let's say 3 months, contacted quite frequently from people that are developing something. Majority of the use cases are circling around surgery, so healthcare stuff. Right now, it might be that more and more in education, in higher education, might come up as well. But what I see right now, or what I've been offered, is really highly bespoke platforms or apps, tools for the healthcare sector. So even
but,
some
but,
kind
but
of
they're looking at production too. If you look at what they've done with the iPad, the iPad is now a production studio. So you're starting to see them, circle around this content creator community, because that is where we're going to tip the scales.
Yeah.
Like enterprise is great. We already know what the use cases are. We know what the ROI is going to be. We already know how to use these devices in an enterprise environment. What we need is creators creating compelling content that is this sort of spatial volumetric content that then you put these headsets on and then suddenly you are in the action. So that's where it starts to get, and you see this ecosystem. And Jennifer, I know we both also were saying like, but what about interoperability?
Right.
But it's the thought iCloud, right? That's our thought iCloud. But I think that's very interesting. And so I think we're starting to see them, circle the story around media content creators, because I think that will be a big trigger for consumer adoption, when we get to the third device and the fourth device and the price comes down.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that, Amy, I agree with you. I think all of those things, are in the works and everything else. I do agree that on the enterprise side, we have a good idea of how we will create ROI with XR generally, and particularly with some of the new feature sets that Vision Pro brings to the table. I'll emphasize again, as I do every time we talk, right? I'm not sure that, especially in this closed ecosystem, we've seen anything yet that gives me the assurance that there's actually the right analytics that will help us to measure the right things to prove that ROI. And this isn't something specific to Vision Pro, it's across the board, right? It's something that we're looking to see so that we actually can show efficacy and ROI in more of the language of business. Hoping to see that. I haven't seen anything yet, but really curious to see not only what content creation looks like, but what analytics can look like around measuring human behavior and operational process efficiency and all of those kinds of things. So it'll be interesting.
The thing is as well, too many players, especially from the bigger companies, are still obsessed with not just ROI, KPIs, OKRs, and the whole horror of economic business. But they ask me quite frequently about how do we protect our IP? And it's simply so overblown. This IP protection is meanwhile misused, not to protect your IP, but to slow down competition. Yesterday, I've been on stage in Dublin, and there were some people from a bigger US company. It starts with an I, and then continues with Intel. And of course, their own question on me from the audience was, how do we protect IP in the future with XR, with coming together AI and so on? My answer was just wrong question. It is about communication, collaboration, cooperation. Stick your competition where the sun does not shine into. It's really, we are currently so focused on setting up our own walled garden to make crap loads of money before someone else comes into it. And this is the Facebook effect.
And I'd like to just take this before we move on to talking about Meta on our next point. So I want to just bring back a few steps is this idea of recreating the Apple smartphone moment. From any of your lot perspective, do you feel like there's perhaps a mistake being made there just by trying to recreate a iPhone moment? It's a completely different technology. We're perhaps harkening back to something that has happened. But then the Vision Pro and then XR headsets themselves, yes, it's a natural evolution from smartphone to headsets. Do you think it's a matter of perhaps putting the wrong expectations on
it was the wrong expectation. It was the wrong communication. As I've said before, many of these pseudo-influencers bought the devices simply to be part of this iPhone revolution. But it was never meant as the iPhone revolution. We might see a Vision XR revolution, however, as soon they are cheaper, affordable, with lots more content, when simply they have redesigned how an XR device, even on usability, might be. I mean, there have been smartphones before the iPhone. They've just not been usable. So we had XR devices before the Vision Pro. They've been just challenging to use. The first devices were just simply crappy. It was no fun to use them. Then they became a little bit better. You still needed a high-end compute device to run these things. Now, when technology becomes so available that you can think about real dynamic realities, now we are near that with the right use cases, we could create some kind of XR iPhone-like momentum. Maybe it will come from Apple. The current Vision Pro was not meant to be like this. It was targeting high-end professionals. It's like if we would say, Red brings a new camera onto it. This will be the iPhone moment for filmmakers. No, it costs too much. It's for professionals.
I'm sure I should know this. Yeah, I'm sure I should know this. But I don't think Apple stood up and said this is an iPhone moment.
No,
this was
the speculation.
Media.
It was the expectation from the media, from all of these influencers, from the grandmother of the metaverse and all the other bullshitters.
So it's not Apple's fault, and they're still doing fine.
Not at all. And I thought they also, even in their messaging and the way they promoted it, they walked the line between utility, business utility, and kind of this sort of social communication piece, which I think was smart. But it's just we've got to have something to talk about, so let's extrapolate well beyond what any of the facts tell us. Let's do that.
I mean, guys, think back when Apple brought out the AirPods. How people were making fun of it. You just cut the cable. They've put additional devices into. Then it simply became something. They've been expensive. Yes, right. So it's really about how does Apple tickle you? What do they really want to achieve? I do not think that they really positioned the Vision Pro as a consumer device for everyone. It was for connoisseurs, it was for developers. It was simply to describe, if we want, we could. Meta, start shaking.
Yeah, I mean, from the developer perspective, it's a bit of an investment, right? And if anything, we should be looking at this and saying, we've seen lots of people invest, right? Which is a good sign, I think, for Apple with regards to, how this ecosystem will evolve over time. It's definitely, I don't think they positioned it either as a consumer product. I think it's more people demonstrating their interest and their commitment to the ecosystem by investing in this initial
What about HoloLens? What about Magic Leap? No one ever started renting that, it's not an affordable device. You need as well a maintenance contract with it. No one ever would start thinking about this. When it comes from Apple, we all are blended by mean, ugly, dirty. No.
Well, wait till they come out with the Apple ring, and I know which finger you're going to wear yours on, Jay.
We've got started it. Major vendor as well, which is Meta, who Meta are very much so hitting a different market. very much clearly aiming towards that consumer market that perhaps some are assuming Apple's initial launch will aim towards. Recently, Apple, through its earnings call and through an online Q&A, with CTO Andrew Bosworth, revealed that they're experimenting with expected features, but perhaps these can have some larger implications. It was revealed that they work with incredibly high smart glasses displays internally at their Reality Labs division. Equally, they've doubled down, on the integration of AI into smart glasses and HMDs. Both very much expected considerations, I think. But leading into Connect, and perhaps going off the back of the Quest Pro last year, as well as rumours about their, I think it's Project Orion, the smart glasses project they've had behind the scenes now since I think Meta Connect 22, perhaps when they first revealed it in a briefcase. Obviously, Meta are going forward with consumer smart glasses as well to work upon the Ray-Ban Stories product. Jennifer, I don't know if you wanted to maybe kick us off with your thoughts on an upcoming Meta smart glasses product. Will this perhaps give Apple a competitor in the enterprise, or is it going to give a completely separate consumer use case? They both feel like they're going to be leveraging similar technologies, or at least technology considerations going forward.
Sure. With all of the appearances that we've seen by Meta in so many different markets at this point, first of all, I would say it's a little bit hard to ascertain. That said, I do think it is interesting, and maybe an Apple effect as well, with regards to looking at higher end functionality and pieces that maybe aren't as appropriate for the immediate consumer market. I would say traditionally, historically, the enterprise solutions that Meta's brought to the table have not necessarily had all of the functionality that enterprise has been looking for. Some of those things have to do with privacy and security, as well as scalability, all of those pieces. I don't know how many of those features also incorporate some of those really important enterprise requirements, so to speak, that we would expect to see. But certainly if there was a move to actually be able to bring some of that great functionality to the forefront in a way in which could actually scale and be secure and all of those aspects, I think it would be very interesting.
But this will not happen, because this is not Facebook's / Meta's business model. Here is a player that would like to get the big money from the industry, but simply came from the consumer and still behaves like everyone is just a consumer. That's the issue. So this Q&A with the CTO, I take it just as a hysteric reaction to we have to deliver something that equals Vision Pro because we want to be a pro as well. It's honestly, they are burned. It doesn't matter how good they are, what kind of potential there is. As long they still behave like Facebook, they will stay a Facebook. Let me bring up a story from Toyota. Toyota wanted to reach the high-paid premium market. But Toyota in the US was just known for small, cheap, reliable, but cheap cars. Nothing that an executive would drive. His daughter can drive it. So things changed when Toyota decided to build an own brand. Maybe Meta needs to build an own brand with a completely new business model behind. This new brand from Toyota was Lexus. Lexus is for luxury US export. Lexus. So simply, if you are just on this mass scalability and consumer product, you need to jump over your shadow and build an entity only for enterprise clients. And then it's as well a different business model and a different device. Maybe more similar to an over-expensive HoloLens, Magic Leap, or a Vision Pro.
Yeah, I mean, look, it makes sense for Meta to move in this direction, and it's not new. I mean, they made a partnership with Luxottica because they wanted to have kind of a wearable, set of smart glasses on one end of the spectrum, and then we all want to get to the true sort of true AR, right, or true mixed reality. In the meantime, we've got pass through because that's what we can do today effectively. But every company who is in the space is trying to bridge the gap between just a very simple, basic, AR smart glasses with minimal functionality that is truly wearable, and these kind of larger, more cumbersome, more challenging devices, but that give us a significant experience. So we're kind of marching towards the middle of where we want to get to from both ends of the spectrum. And I think that's the type of R&D we need to expect from the companies. And the only companies that can afford to do this are the Metas and, the Microsoft back in the day, and the, $4 plus and change $1 billion that Magic Leap received. It's that level of investment. And, we know that Meta is selling those, their Quest devices at cost because it's market making, right? And there's not many players who can afford to do that.
The other thing I'd add is if you look at what they were chatting about in terms of pixels per degree and whatever. So just purely from a technology point of view, if you look at the advancements in lens technology, there's all sorts of whatever waveguide and diffractive and crystals and right. So there's some very clever people out there coming up with things, and then you start adding in the compute capability in terms of, well, I don't have to render everything on the glass. I just render what you're looking at, and your brain thinks I'm just whatever, right? So it's about the experience. Now, all this technology isn't there yet, and whatever. But I'll tell you, I think what's going to be fascinating in the next 12 months, 18 months. People are they're going to start throwing generative AI and a lot of this material science, chemicals, stuff that we could try 3 things a year. We'll now be simulating 300 a week, and someone will fall over something and go, God, I never thought of that. This is fixing some whatever. So I think we might see some leapfrog, let's say, technology developments in terms of lenses and how we compute stuff and we get more power in the head, blah, blah, blah. So I think some of the things we limit ourselves with today will change. So if Meta are off playing with, well, how many pixels per degree do you really need to whatever, and how can we ramp it up and whatever? To Amy's point, good. I hope others are doing it as well, because then we'll have a bit of competition. The other thing I'd throw out there, and again, look, business models and whatever, they open sourced the headset OS. That's got to be a good thing, right? You'll have more people playing with it. So again, let's see what somebody else will come up with.
And
so from a technology point of view, I think there's so many moving pieces here.
Yeah, and I think if anyone wants to see really what's happening on the optical engineering side, go to one of the SPIE events, which is dedicated to all of these, and go walk the floor, read some of the papers, and you'll see how advanced some of the optical engineering. One of the challenges is then putting everything together, the level of compute, the batteries, the heat, all of that. And so I think you're right, Kevin. I think throwing that problem at AI, and then you start to look at the other side of it is allowing AI to kind of be the end user's partner in how they are moving through an experience, and almost using it as a little bit of a guide. You talk about the foveated rendering, right? So we're only in focus. Also, you don't want the entire scene being fully rendered because that's not how the eye sees, right? These are all things that are going to take down the level of compute, the real-time 3D streaming, and then kind of weighting the level of compute and rendering between pre-rendered in the cloud to edge to network to device, right? So being able to use AI to actually balance that in real time is going to take a lot of the heaviness of compute off of these devices. And I think we just have to assume that we're going to solve those problems. And I think you're right, Kevin. I think we're kind of at that point where, in terms of how we're architecting these glasses, AI is going to be incredibly valuable. And so I think it's on both sides. I think it's on the experiential side, and then I think it's also on the engineering side.
There are several discussions that nearly sometimes are more of some kind of occultistic group debating some kind of huge mysteries and so on. We barely, or the industry barely, starts discussing some kind of common sense about stuff. Do we need flat displays, or should we use curved displays simply to reduce this distance from the eye to the display? Because this as well is another huge triggering factor for sharpness and so on. All of this, how the human eye sees. Also here, not enough medical people are involved into development. Yes, of course, we just see in this one center really sharp. So it does not make sense to compute everything onto high availability and high fidelity, yada, yada. The thing is just depending on the eye movement. When you have a headset, your eyes start to behave differently. The eye blink rate goes down. The focal point starts to change. We mostly stop looking around with the eyes. We turn the head. So here, it's really the implications of the technology of the heaviness on how the displays are, how to compute this. I think we will make huge progress when several of these players would maybe go somewhere into a hotel and start talking with each other. Multimodality, interoperability, defining so that not you feel better if you wear the device from XYZ, and if you have it from a competitor, you immediately have to throw out. It's really, I think we are currently too focused. It's same with like the discussion around how many megahertz does your computer need to have. It's simply distracting from what really needs to happen. And AI could help to cover some of these technological mistakes. It could pretend that it's better, but it's still not a solution. We have to go from several directions, and we have to talk with each other. This is my take on this. So again, some kind of early shot from Meta, just to pretend we are the biggest tiger in the room. Nope.
But you give them credit for investing in different display technologies and trying stuff, right?
And spending so much money, I suppose, as well in that Reality Labs division. They spend a lot of time and money looking into stuff that only they and maybe only a select other companies have the resources to do so. So I guess there's that point too.
Rory, each of us is as well investing a lot of money, a lot of time into the latest devices. Who gives us credits for this, right? I mean, look into the big AI that continues with Intel. They had amazing stuff in their Eurolabs in Ireland. No one gives them credit because you've never seen it. So as long it's just in your labs, as long it can disappear in the shelf, I don't give a damn. This is their fucking job.
But two things. Being ex-Intel, I used to spend a lot of time in leak slip, and they have some very cool.
Who is Intel?
Clever. Anyway, I'm sure we all spend lots of money and things, but I'm not sure about your spend rate. But I would assume Meta Reality Labs and them spend a bit more than more than I do.
Then you and your like 4.3 billion. Their expenses for Reality Labs.
Just short.
Just shy. Yeah. You were just under the 4 billion mark.
Left pocket. No.
Well, yeah, this is why somebody lives in the south of France.
Yeah, of course.
Someone has.
I mean, we're not gonna name names, Kevin O'Donovan, who used to work for a company none of us have ever heard for, Intel.
Well, hey guys, it gets back to everything we've talked about before, right? XR doesn't exist without humans. It would be great if humans would collaborate around some of these things because we could advance the space a lot further if there was more collaboration, rather than, I think Jay talked about the silos and the walled gardens and everything before. There's a tremendous amount of spend. I would like to see it more efficiently, efficiently utilized, by talking about some of these things that we're all discussing now that would bring about, interoperability and more advancement in the space more generally in the in the effort or attempt to provide a compelling and useful experience to humans, which I think is what the technology is meant to do.
You can spend 3 billions and you can spend 3 billions. If you just reinvent the wheel again and again and again, then 3 billions are not enough.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing, and I get it in terms of, every business has R&D, every business is investing and has to have a business model that works. That said, it's difficult because what I think we're all hoping doesn't happen is that we end up in a space again where people kind of become the product instead of the product being the product, right? And if we're not collaborating around some of those pieces, we run the risk of that happening again. And so, it's great to see the investment. I think we all benefit from investment in the space. It would be great if there was a little bit more collaboration in some cases so that everyone could advance things forward.
Well said. Well said.
Now, in fairness, there's a lot of work being done in standards, and not more standards, but consolidating. And there's a lot of moving pieces in that as well. So
Agreed.
I live in hope, certainly in industry. And to the human aspect, one of the biggest strategic imperatives at Hanover Messe from the German government and from all the trade associations, and we don't have enough skilled workers anywhere on the planet, in most industries.
No, especially in Germany. We have enough people, just the industry is not willing to pay them. It's far easier to scream to destroy other economies, to import their people on green cards. It's really, we have so many good people. It's just, you are overqualified.
So the reality in most of Europe is that we may have enough qualified people, they're just in the wrong place.
Yup.
Now, we can all say, well, move. Great, I'm not going to move, right? So that's my decision and whatever.
You should not move. You are in southern France.
But Jay, cut long story short, there's a lot of things going on, and there's an awful around the world. There's a lot of things about home shoring, bringing back manufacturing, bringing back high tech manufacturing. It's not that I need cheap labor. I need cheap energy. I need the raw materials, but I can have robot and blah blah blah. But how do I upskill, reskill, whatever? And the biggest opportunity I see for the XR industry right now is that every business is going, where do I get these people? And it depends on the country and depends on the part of the country and. But like, if this is not a enabler for XR, all technologies for people to start playing with them, then I don't know what is, right? But
the XR area or the immersive space could also be part of the solution of this shortage on skilled workers.
That's what I'm saying. It is.
And this is really, it's not just, it's really, it's this chicken egg problem. And as long the people don't start talking with each other and sharing, we are currently so obsessed with our own domains and closing everything away and just me. And this is really the thing that right now is some kind of this last tone that comes out of your flute before you die. And this is currently the overall industry, especially in Germany, sorry to say, is in some kind of midlife crisis.
Well, I was at the BDI, the German industry event for the industrial metaverse. And they brought together a lot of the key players in German industry, and they saw it as a way of the technology bringing competitive advantage or maintaining competitive advantage to the Mittelstand, all the small and medium enterprises. Mm-hmm. So
Rory, we don't have enough time to start talking about Mittelstand and so on. Kevin, another Guinness.
I will jump in here since Kevin mentioned standards, and once again, reiterate that standards are incredibly important. Kevin, I agree with you 100% around the idea that we do have a huge talent pipeline crisis globally. And I think the EU is definitely working on that. The US is working on that. I mean, and everybody's trying to come together to work on this in smart ways. I do believe XR serves a huge purpose and a great role in this. That's why, as we've talked about every time, right, the standards not only around the hardware and software are important, but also the data standards around, are we actually upskilling people in XR? How are we measuring that we're upskilling people in XR? All of those kinds of things. So, I mean, we're excited from an IEEE perspective that we have standards that can address that. They are open source. We would love for a lot of these major OEMs that we've been talking about today to engage around discussion around some of these standards, because I think it would be incredibly helpful with regards to, not only showing the efficacy from an enterprise perspective, but also bringing true value to people around preparing them for the future of work and the jobs that they're going to do tomorrow.
Brilliant. And I just want to roll it back, Kevin, to your point about the industrial metaverse. I think that flows nicely into our final point of the episode. With your experience with industrial metaverse digital twin solutions, I'm curious on your take on this, and please everyone else jump in after the fact. But recently, Unity has appointed Matthew Bromberg as the company's new Chief Executive Officer, President and a member of the Unity Board of Directors. This is following an interim period for previous leaders over the turn of the new year. What I find quite interesting about this, Kevin, I'm curious to hear your perspective, is there's Unreal, Unity, NVIDIA Omniverse, kind of this ecosystem of real-time 3D engines and development kits, software development kits, etc. These have had such a, maybe not a change in vision, but they've had such an interesting new application in terms of not just XR, but then how people are using 3D data on the whole. And that could be digital twins on a laptop, on a phone, to a headset. But what I'm quite curious about, Kevin, is your perspective on those perhaps three pillars, and maybe there's more that should be considered there too. You kind of got the streaming end with NVIDIA Omniverse, and then you got the two real-time 3D development kits with Unreal and Unity. How do you feel about that trilogy? And Unity seemed to have this little bit of a leadership problem. They had, or a hurdle probably more so. They had a pricing controversy towards the end of last year too. So while they're all trucking along and doing very well, how do you feel about those three pillars of real-time 3D engines? Do you see any perhaps as leading more than the other, or do you think it's a fairly competitive race still at the moment?
I think it's fairly competitive, and I do think there's a lot of Unity, Unreal. They've been around a while, right? So you kind of have the two tribes, right? So you kind of talk to one company, oh, we use this and we use that. Just on the Unity thing, look, we chatted last year about they had some challenges and whatever. I wish the new executive and the team there all the best. The thing I was most pleased to see, and I think what they'll be judged on, is that they have Unity 6 coming down the line. And if they keep adding features and delivering it and it's robust and developers like it and find there was the fun in games with the licensing and whatever, but as long as they keep delivering tools that industry can use, I think that people will that's what'll keep them in the game. In terms of a lot of the stuff I would see, to me fundamentally is a company, the industry, you have to get the data. If you don't have data, you can't train your AI, you can't have a digital twin, whatever. You can do whatever you want, but it's not going to work. So once I get the data, then I build a digital twin, and I might have multiple digital twins. And whether or not I want to have an immersive experience with XR, VR, I want to photorealistically render it in the cloud and stream it down, whatever, then you can make, it's like anything, I'll choose a platform or I'll choose a partner of choice, and then there's a competitive thing between them, right? You need competition. And I think that's where they fit in. But it's like if I'm an energy company and I want to have a digital twin, Unity is not the answer of straight up. Neither is Unreal. Neither is in Omniverse. I need to have the data. I need to have my IT systems, my design, and whatever. So I think it's a piece of the puzzle. You cannot get to the industrial metaverse if you're not able to have properly immersive remote collaboration and do simulation in real time. So there's all these bits of the puzzle. But hey, I wish Unity well. But as long as they keep delivering things like Unity 6 and hitting their schedules and it works, good for them.
I'm a tiny little bit concerned about the way of Unity because, of course, they fired a third of their employees, which is always some kind of, let's say, message that is challenging. The one thing that I've not heard so far openly talking about is that they're stopped the cooperation with VetaFX, which should have been some kind of, let's say, alternative to the Unreal film set, movie preparing, yada yada, simply to get into another market, to become a real competitor to Unreal. And now that they stopped this, that they rolled this back, I don't know if not a little bit more was broken with their approach to get more money and now trying to fix everything. There are far more aspects on this that might be a little bit more damaging than what we see on the surface.
No, but I think Unity, and this is my personal opinion, but first of all, I'm a fan of the company. I always have been. And, they are, if you listen to their last earnings call that Jim Whitehurst did while he was still interim CEO, they're really getting back to their roots, which is primarily as a game engine. And then now they're, focused on real-time 3D. They have the industry side of the business, but at their core, it's a game engine, right? And so, Weta was a very big investment, but they are not, they're not a product company in that sense. And so, I think everything they've done has been a smart move. The problem is that as soon as you become a publicly traded company, you're living out loud in the public eye, right? And you have to report these things. And it's not that they're going through anything different than the other tech companies have been going through, for the last, 2, 3, 4 years. It's just, they made a little misstep last year with the pricing, but they quickly, jumped on that. Jim Whitehurst was, used to be CEO of Red Hat. He is brilliant. He is still on the board. If you look at Matthew Bromberg's history, it's, most recently very much in games, but he has, deep industry and enterprise expertise and experience. And so, this is just them growing up as a public company, and they've just unfortunately had to do it in the public eye. It's like, being a teenage, film star getting arrested, right? It's going to be on the front page until you grow up, move out of it, and become an adult. And this is where they are now. And so I'm happy to see the change. I think they're on a great path. I agree with you, Kevin, on Unity 6 and their Unity Cloud product. I think we have good things ahead, coming from Unity in the coming months.
Don't get me wrong, I like them as well. They are a great company. I always prefer them over the others. The thing is, just one of the biggest advantages that you had with Unity is that they've been working extremely efficient on mobile devices. Because if you see that compute power is mobile in the next time, movable, not fixed somewhere in your high-end compute machine where you need Unreal for. And here it could have been simply this huge, let's say, revolution to bring portable high-end 3D compute power, even onto, let's say, directly working within a specialized camera. so that you don't need this huge backend. This was one of the goals with Latta, with this path. So this huge advantage seems to be right now forgotten, how efficient they've been on mobile devices. They fit as well extremely good into moving vehicles. All of this 3D stuff that you need for XR within a windshield and so on, or in a plane, it's what makes me a tiny little bit concerned is that yes, as a public company, you are mostly driven by your shareholders, not by the stakeholders anymore. And if everything is just beaten up by we want to have our money every time per year, that it might destroy a lot of the initial power that they had. That they might become a little bit too careful and miss what they could have done.
Brilliant. And to wrap us off, Jennifer, why don't you give us some of your thoughts on the Unity change up, and then perhaps the current standard of Unity alongside Unreal, its integration with others as well. What are your thoughts before we close up for the day?
Sure. I'll echo a lot of the things that everyone said. Unity has been in this space a long time. They're very much, one of the products that's very much, well, maybe they're not a product, a game engine, right? That's trusted by developers. I think they'll continue to grow. I agree with Amy. I think this is a little bit of just kind of focusing in on the core market, and really kind of reorganizing the organization to be able to really kind of dive into that core more deeply. I agree with Kevin that it's not necessarily something that we'll utilize for every type of application that we see in XR, particularly in industrial. But that said, there's lots of great ecosystem partners of Unities and everything else that have a vested interest in their success, and great expertise in using the platform. And so I think we'll continue to see them move forward. I do think it's interesting, and I think we'll see, as the strategy starts to unfold, where the focal points are. Definitely from a standards perspective, we from an IEEE perspective had a lot of great conversations with Unity about some of the standards, and they've been quite receptive to some of those advanced things that we can do. So I'm looking forward to seeing where they may be able to carry that forward as well into some of the new products and engines that they bring to the table.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. We're going to be wrapping up now. That's it from myself, and I'd like to thank you, Kevin, Jay, Jennifer and Amy, all for joining me today. It's been a really intriguing chat. I personally learned so much from this, and I'm sure our readers will too. So thank you all so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Brilliant. You can get more XR news from XR Today by following our social pages and the YouTube channel. I'm Rory Greener from XR Today, and thank you so much for watching.